Konnichiwa, Nuki-san here again. Long time hiatus and getting back to a random thing. New addition I got recently, Yamaha DX100. Now this is not a traditional keyboard, like a lot of you will probably have keyboards that are similar to like this one here. This is a Technics keyboard. It's got integrated speakers. It's more just general purpose for like practicing with, or you know, amateur stuff, and I mean that in a non-insultive way. Whereas this one, it's not quite the same. There's no internal speakers, and yeah, there's quite a lot of different I/O ports. You've got MIDI in, out, through, a cassette interface, which I believe is just for like saving styles and programs onto an external tape. Breath control, contrast. We've got foot switch, phones, and output. Output is the stereo audio in core and strict rack. Phones is for obviously your headphones, and then foot switch I'm assuming is for, you know, setting different parameters, but or changing it on the fly. This is kind of more professional grade equipment, and if you're not entirely sure what this is, if you can't tell by the algorithms up here or the operators, or the fact it has a lack of any traditional you know, patches or what they know like instruments. Basically, it's because this is a FM keyboard, and as you can see there, it's a programmable algorithm synthesizer, which basically means that it's got an FM chip in here that you actually tell the chip, you know, you program the chip on how it should sound. So all these operators are different settings you can set up, and there's so much when it comes to FM synthesis, and it's something I'm not going to get into. Anyway, I digress. Basically, this thing works, but it doesn't. And when I first got it, it didn't work at all. It took me about half an hour to figure out why it wasn't entirely working. But now I've gotten to this stage. Standard DC 12 volts in, center positive, not center negative. You turn it on. It comes up with a little nice display on the Hitachi display. And this is what I mean when it comes to programming. Like, I don't know how to set up patches or whatever. There are pre-built ones in, like presets in here. To do that, what you do is go function compare, and then like that, and it comes up saying, you know, hard brass, and then you, as far as I figured out, I can use these numbers to change to a different preset. But that's about as far as I know with these things, because FM programmable synthesizers are quite a bit of a different beast than what you're used to. What the problem is with this now, at first it wasn't turning on at all. It was intermittent. It would sometimes work and sometimes not, and when it did come on, it didn't boot. There's two voltage regulators in here. There's a 7808, which is a 8 volt positive regulator, and there's a 7905, which is a minus 5 volt generator. I don't know why there wasn't a 5 volt regulator. I don't believe this whole thing works on 8 volts, but I could be wrong. Anyway, the connections had there was cracks around the solder, so I went and reflowed the solder around the DC jack, the power regulators, and all the jacks, just to make sure it was all good, and then it popped up and fine. That's the problem though. If we turn the sound all the way up to max, I don't have just plugged into any speakers, and there is no speakers, as I've said, so yeah, as you noticed, there's next to no sound coming out of there. And even though they're headphones, you should be able to hear that on max volume. However, it's not really the case. There is something. If I put you right next to it, I'll see if you can get it. You might have to really listen in closely to that bit, but you can hear that there's sorry, you can hear that there is audio, but it's really faint. Really faint, and I don't get anything on the output. Even when I hook it up into an amplifier, I don't get anything. So something is clearly wrong with the internal of this keyboard, which is a shame, but you know, hey ho, always gives us electronics folk a excuse to open it up and have a look inside, and which we will do right now. I can't remember which way this keyboard opens. I haven't screwed it back up or anything. Actually, you know what? If I turn it upside down, see, there was a reason I put it on this little rug. If we take this off, I've already removed the battery connection before. And this is the back side of the board. Unfortunately, as Dave Jones would say, we've been mooned. But if we remove the main board, we're going to have a little inspection. Right. So you can see DX100, apparently this is 27, but they've crossed that out, so I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, the main display down there, the Hitachi display, this is the exact same thing as you get in, like, well, modern day Arduino 16x2 LCDs. Just this is a 1x16 display, I believe, or maybe it's a 1x10, I'm not quite certain on that. The FM chip in this one is a YM2164, which is a I think it's a derivative of another FM chip. I think it's OPM. Correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, and we've got two RAM chips here. These are 20 nanosecond RAM chips. I believe they are. No idea what that part number is, but they're RAM's chips to do with the SRAM. There was an internal battery, it just started leaking, so I've cut that out. Surprisingly, it doesn't complain at me for not having a battery in there, but hey, I'll just put a socket in there with a CR2032, it'll be fine. We've got a ROM chip in here, which I believe, I think it's a ROM chip, maybe, that's not quite sure what that is off the top of my mind, but it is socketed, so I would have thought it's something to do with a ROM, like for the patches or whatever. We've got some more RAM down in there. 1 nanosecond RAM, I think. And then we've got a Hitachi processor in there, microcontroller. I believe that's going to be probably based around 68000 series. I could be wrong, but it's either that or H8. It's one of those two. But it's really not that difficult of a beast. Actually, having a think about it, that might be the MIDI controller when you look at all the MIDI ports coming in. So that might be like a MIDI/system controller. And here's the two regulators I was talking about. 7808, which is an 8-volt regulator. 7905, which is a -5 volt regulator. And I said the solder around the pins are all cracked, so I've repaired them. If you've not noticed, this video is just going to be entirely one shot, just as I'm going, because I just wanted to show it off and say, you know, what I've been messing about with. And anyway, so YM2164 is, like most of the Yamaha FM chips, it's not a whole package. It doesn't just do everything within itself. The output of this is digital. You need a DAC, digital to analog converter, which is right down there, and all that does is convert the digital data out of this into a stereo output source, because I believe that you can set up like left and right panning on this, but again, FM registers are quite a beast. Well, what it looks like, we've got two op amps down here. One will be for the line level, one will be for the headphone, assuming. So between this chip and these two, or these two, and going on forward, we've lost sound data, so we need to figure out what's going on with that, or I need to figure out what's going on with that, and get it working, because I would like to mess about with this. As much as I've got not much of attachment to this keyboard, you know, it would be nice to play about with, and even if it's just too much for me to handle, it's always better to get these things working, rather than like throw them out or recycle them. You know, maybe I'll give it to the 8-bit guy or something. I don't know. Because one reason I want to keep this is because it's not the same as, it's not too dissimilar to the YM2612, which is the FM sound chip of the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis, and it's a very similar chip, but like it's got a slightly different sound to it, but it's all FM, it's all Yamaha FM. It does sound very similar. You get the same amount of channels as well, I believe, or I think maybe this one has slightly more channels. Essentially, me being a Mega Drive fanboy, I love the FM chip in the Mega Drive, so having something like this I can just set up and play as if it were a console is quite nice. because although I've got a project on the go which involves the actual YM2612 sound chip, this is a nice approximation of it before I can get that done, if I can get this working. You know, these are nice keyboards, and there are quite a few mods that you can do to these to get different sound effects and you know, interesting weird quirks. Like, I think if you cut data lines on the sound chip, like put switches on the line, you can really mess about with the audio output. You know, it's quite interesting, really. But yeah, so I'm gonna have to look at this at some point. Figure out what's going on. At least it is making sound, because that means that all the data coming from the microcontroller to the sound chip is working, and that the sound chip is working, that the DAC is also working. So yeah, just show you what I mean though with this keyboard, because it does at least function otherwise. Sorry about the glare, I can't do much about that except for that. So yeah, weirdly you got a slider for inputting data, and Yamaha seem to do this quite a bit with these keyboards, and they're kind of a pain to get because they're not very precise. They do work though. You got pitch bend up here, modulation, which is a new thing to me, but you know, it's always nice to have. Yeah, and then just like loads of channel modifications you can do. There you go, cassette, so that'll be for saving to cassette, because you notice it's a DIN port, but it's not a DIN 5, it's a DIN 8. No, not a DIN 8, what is that? No, it is a DIN 8. So that might be a proprietary interface, but it also might be a quite common interface. I'm not quite sure of which one it is yet. So that's all the controls for doing that. Key velocity and all that, which is standard stuff. But yeah, you can see up here the wave pattern, or the envelope generator, and that is what you're programming into the FM chip, because what essentially FM does is you set up all these operators to make up this particular, like a waveform, this being an example, and this is the waveform that repeats, and because of the way obviously sound works, the more complex that is, the vastly different sound is. There's a lot that goes into these things, and I'm really not the person to explain it all, because I just mess about and tinker with things, and you know, I'm no engineer, and I just manage to get things working, and I just play about with them until I get bored of them. But anyway, a quick look at the DX100. Actually quite a nice condition, well, other than the keys, but it's something that could always be sorted out, really. But yeah, quite a nice little thing